All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I'm your host, Nolan, and we got a lot to talk about today. We're going to continue our analysis of the chaos in Minnesota, which has not stopped. Now, if you've been keeping up with the show or the news in general, you would know that there were ICE operations this month that resulted in the death of two American citizens, Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And as a result of this, there was massive uproar in Minnesota and in the city of Minneapolis. Massive protests, in some case riots, against ICE and Border Patrol, which are operating in the state. And as a result of this, it has led to major shakeups in the Trump administration and their policy on immigration, which has led to Greg Bovino, essentially the face of the immigration policy in the state, to be ousted from his role. And Tom Homan just yesterday went and did a press conference and essentially filled the void left by Bovino. So we'll get into the analysis of everything that Tom Homan said, and we'll also talk about the broader shakeup and why the Trump administration's immigration policy is so chaotic and really is without a plan. So we'll talk about all this today and more on the Quest for Clarity podcast.
It is about who we are. It is about what we believe.
They're building up this case just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
The more you tell the truth, the stronger you become.
Mr. Speaker, we're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic tonight. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg.
Maybe we should improve the liberty of our own country before we seek to do so abroad. Some of us have paid attention to the fact that the expert class, including the foreign policy experts, lie all the time. The correct answer to this, of course, as it always is liberty. All right, everybody, before we begin, if you wouldn't mind going right down below this video and hitting like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. Also, if you wouldn't mind going to my Instagram, X, and Spotify and giving all those a follow, I'd really appreciate that as well. Let's get into the news of the day. We'll start off here by reading this New York Times article. It just goes over the basics of Tom Homan's appearance yesterday in Minneapolis. Again, Greg Bovino, his title is Commander at Large, which isn't really the title, but it's kind of what he's known as, Commander at Large of Border Patrol. He was essentially the face of the ICE operations in Minnesota during all of this chaos. He's been seen in multiple instances in the street. He's been seen all around, kind of giving pep talks to the ICE agents and kind of leading the charge in terms of the strategy of these ICE and Border Patrol operations in the state. And as a result of the chaos and unrest of the last 2 weeks, we saw Donald Trump essentially pressure Bovino out of his role. Now, there were multiple different reports coming from the administration, people leaking within Border Patrol, undersecretaries, staffers, leaking to the press that Bovino was fired from his role, and this was not technically true. He was essentially pressured out. He will be going to somewhere else across the country. They say San Diego. But this is the New York Times article on Tom Homan's appearance in Minneapolis yesterday, again, basically filling the role that Bovino left. It says, quote, Tom Homan, the White House border czar, acknowledged on Thursday that federal deportation actions in Minneapolis have been flawed, but said there could be a, quote, drawdown if local officials allow his immigration agents to access their local jails. The 2-month federal crackdown, known as Operation Metro Surge, has seen thousands of ICE and Border Patrol officers descend on the city. The operation has led to protests and violent confrontations in the street and killing of 2 residents shot by federal agents. Quote, I'm not here because the federal government has carried out this mission perfectly, Mr. Homan said at a 7 a.m. news conference on BH Whipple building just outside of Minneapolis. Quote, certain improvements could and should be made. President Trump sent Mr. Homan to Minnesota this week, days after the death of Alex Preddy, 37, a veteran affairs nurse who had been recording a woman being arrested by an immigration agent when he was shot multiple times. His death came about 2 weeks after the fatal shooting of another Minneapolis resident, Renee Good, 37. So, amidst all of this chaos, we are really seeing chaos within the Trump administration as well. Because it's all of these different factions. It's really very political within the Trump administration because you have all these different factions, whether it be Border Patrol or ICE or the executive branch, the Trump guys, Susie Weil, Stephen Miller, all of these guys. And then you have DHS, you have Kristi Noem and her people really all trying to push each other under the bus. It's really chaotic. We'll get into more detail about that in a second with some of the statements that have come out, but it's really nobody's on the same page at this point. And Tom Homan basically was sent to Minneapolis to kind of try and calm the situation down, because where it stands right now, the Trump administration clearly can see how chaotic this is, and they have access to these numbers, which they're not really sharing with everybody else. But the numbers of deportations that have come of all this chaos are really not much to be proud of. So they're looking really for any way to get out of this, because I'm sure they don't want to be hung up in Minneapolis, and they would like to find an off-ramp here, because this is not good PR. The approval ratings of Trump as a whole, as well as the immigration policy, have plummeted because of this chaos and unrest in the city. And this is all a result of, again, infighting in the administration. So here are some of the clips from Tom Homan's press conference here, where essentially he makes it known that the overall policy of immigration enforcement is not going to change, but they are going to re-strategize, and they're going to go forward instead of these kind of broad missions. They're going to be very precise, is what Tom Homan is saying. Take a look.
And then come here looking for photo ops or headlines. I come here looking for solutions. I do not want to hear that everything's been done here has been perfect. Nothing's ever perfect, and anything can be improved on. And what we've been working on is making this operation safer, more efficient, by the book. The mission is going to improve because of the changes we're making internally. No agency or organization is perfect. And President Trump and I, along with others in the administration, have recognized that certain improvements could and should be made. ICE and CBP officers are performing their duties in a challenging environment, under tremendous circumstances, but they're trying to do it with professionalism. If they don't, they'll be dealt with. Like any other federal agency, we have standards of conduct. They are sworn law enforcement officers working tirelessly to enforce our country's border security, immigration laws, protecting the interests of our country and preventing dangerous people from walking the streets of this nation when they're not supposed to be here to begin with. I have conveyed the President's expectations with regard to federal immigration enforcement efforts. We will conduct targeted enforcement operations. Targeted. What we've done for decades. When we hit the streets, we know exactly who we're looking for. Good idea where we may find them. You'll have a criminal history. You'll have their immigration history. A lot of information about this person that we get from numerous databases out there. Targeted, strategic enforcement operations. I want to be clear. I don't read a lot of social media. I don't read a lot of media. I don't believe half what I see. We are not surrendering the President's mission on immigration enforcement. Let's make that clear. Prioritization of criminal aliens doesn't mean we forget about everybody else. That's just simply ridiculous. But when you have a criminal standing here and a non-criminal standing there, that criminal always should be targeted first, because he's a significant concern to the safety and security of the community. By and large, for decades, ICE and CBP have carried out their duties with integrity, professionalism, and compassion. That remains the expectation of President Trump, and I will hold our agents and officers to that standard.
So simultaneously here with this Homan press conference, we see two things. We see in that first clip in that sequence when Tom Homan says that I don't want to hear everything's been done perfectly, I'm not here for a photo shoot. Those are direct shots at both Kristi Noem and Greg Bovino there. Those are direct shots at them, because Kristi Noem has been showing up to these press conferences dressed up like a cowgirl for no reason. Like, she shows up in her costume. And Greg Bovino has been saying everything's been done perfectly. He's been very hardcore, sticking with the ICE officers, having their back. So he's taking direct shots at both of them there, which is just you can see the tension within the administration leaking out into these public press appearances. Also, when Bovino was relieved of his duties as commander-at-large in Minneapolis, the leakers, the undersecretaries of whatever, in the administration were leaking to the press that Trump had told Bovino off, he fired him, he was out of the administration. This was the original story. So someone asked the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, about this, asking her to clarify, because we had no official word of what actually happened there. Caroline Leavitt says, no, everything's fine, everyone's getting along here, and Trump just wanted to move Bovino out of his role. and just have some switch up here so we can get out of this chaotic moment. This is what Caroline Leavitt was saying. So no matter what the actual story is here, it's clear there is some tension if we have these people in DHS or in ICE leaking to the press that Bovino was told off by Trump. You also have kind of a broader struggle session going on within the administration right now with all of these different factions, and also within the broader Republican Party. We see Republican senators right now frantically calling up Donald Trump, telling him to fire Kristi Noem. They're all trying to throw Kristi Noem under the bus. And to be honest, Kristi Noem is incredibly stupid and is not a good person for this role. I don't like Kristi Noem at all. I don't think she knows what she's doing. In fact, the rumors are that Corey Lewandowski, her chief of staff, or her supposed chief of staff, is actually running the show. So I don't think Kristi Noem even knows what's going on. And she has been getting all the blame from Stephen Miller as well, for the fact that Stephen Miller went out on a limb and said that this guy, Alex Preddy, was a domestic terrorist without any evidence. Because Kristi Noem just came out and said that without any evidence that was the case. They made up this whole story about the reason Alex Preddy was getting beat up and then shot by the Border Patrol officers was that he approached them brandishing a gun. And that story has not been corroborated by anybody. And in fact, apparently there's some evidence that shows it wasn't a gun in his hands, it was actually his phone. And we can also see in the video, the gun is in his back pocket, and never once in the video that has gone viral from multiple angles, never once has he seen brandishing the gun. So Kristi Noem bungled this from the start, and now she's catching all the flack for it from every faction within the administration. You have Susie Wiles and Stephen Miller throwing her under the bus. You have those guys throwing Tom Homan and them under the bus. And it's just completely dysfunctional. And then you have you have Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski coming out and saying, no, everything that we have done so far in our roles at Homeland Security have been at the direct direction of Trump and Susie Wiles and Stephen Miller. This is what they're saying. So, and by them saying, I mean, they are leaking to the press. Them, their understaffers are all leaking to the press that these other factions are to blame. And this is happening from every angle. So nobody's on the same page here at all. Republican senators, specifically Susan Collins in Maine, are in a panic now, trying to get ICE out of their states because this is a political loser for them come November. So all of this is just ridiculous. And it all comes down to the basic problem, which is that the Trump administration never was serious about mass deportations and never actually had a real plan. And this is really because Trump's donors and agriculture and hospitality do not want mass deportations. So, and Trump said this himself. I actually think I have the Truth Social post right here. Trump said it himself back in June. Trump said, quote, "Our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good, long-time workers away from them, with these jobs being almost impossible to replace. In many cases, the criminals allowed in our country by the very stupid Biden open border policy are applying for those jobs. This is not good. We must protect our farmers and get the criminals out of the USA. Changes are coming." So from the start, that's 5 months into the administration. So from the start of this is months ago, we had massive shakeups in the administration that signaled that nobody was really that serious about what actual mass deportations would look like, which is get people out of these positions, go after these industries that heavily employ and pay garbage wages to these illegal workers. I mean, that's what you would have to do if you're going to have mass deportations. That's like the first thing you do. And we even saw this, I forget which state it was in, but we see these raids on these car manufacturing facilities and these battery manufacturing facilities. And instantly, after the raid is done, they say, okay, never mind. They give up on it because they get pressure from these corporations, which donate a lot of money to Republican politics. They get pressure that they need that labor because they can pay them trash and not have to pay Americans a living wage. That's what it is. That's the reason that the administration has stepped back because, and there probably is some truth to the fact that the economy would face a bump in the road from all of this labor being taken out of the labor market. That's probably true. But then you cannot simultaneously say you're for mass deportations then, because that's what that looks like. Mass deportations means getting the people in this country who have no legal right to be here, have no moral right to be here, getting them out. That's what it looks like. And the Trump administration, from the start, was not willing to make that happen. So now, this is the situation we're in. We are in the situation now where we see in Minneapolis, for example, these crazy street clashes because we're sending these ICE agents into the streets with no plan. They're going after one, maybe two people in a single house, and they're faced with this barrage of leftist agitators that are trying to fight and get these people out of the city. And since we have no plan here, since we are being very stupid about how we're going about this, they don't even really want to get these numbers up. They're just trying to put on a show for the MAGA base, for the Republican base, to make it seem as if the mass deportations are happening. When, again, I pointed this number out last episode. The actual number of deportations that happened in the first Trump year, the best estimate was 230,000. For reference, the first year, I believe it was the first year, of Obama's first term in deportations, guess how many he got? 260,000. So you're telling me, and that was with no media frenzy, that was with no massive backlash from these street agitators, Barack Obama, in his first year as president, without any chaos, without any of this massive unrest, these civil war clashes in the streets of our cities, he was able to get 30,000 more people out of this country than the Trump administration has. For all of this chaos, for open civil conflict in the street, you're telling me we couldn't even get more than Obama in his first year. It's a signal that we have no plan. Nobody's thinking critically here, and nobody's even coming forward with a plan. It's these massive shows of force that are the ideas of people like Stephen Miller and I don't know about Tom Homan, but Stephen Miller, Greg Bovino, maybe Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski. It's these massive showing of force that are not producing any significant numbers of deportations, and all they are doing is resulting in this chaos in the street, which then turns people off to the prospect or the idea of mass deportations in the future. It makes it a political loser for Republicans in the midterms, and it probably makes it a political loser for J.D. Vance in 2028. So if we couldn't get mass deportations, if we couldn't, with the mandate that we got in 2024, if Donald Trump, having won the popular vote and having 65% of the country want mass deportations, if he can't put together a team of people to get some strategies here for mass deportations, you think J.D. Vance is going to do that in 2028? Especially after this debacle that we've just witnessed? The mismanagement of these shootings, the mismanagement of these ICE raids in Minneapolis. You think J.D. Vance is going to be able to have a massive mandate to get mass deportations in this country? There's going to be the political will for that? You're dreaming. There's no way. And let me just touch here for a second on the mismanagement of this all. As I said before, Kristi Noem came out instantly in this press conference, and they labeled this man a domestic terrorist. They labeled him... They basically created this story, this very vague story, that he approached them with a gun, which of course gives you the idea that he approached them brandishing a gun and pointing it at them. And then they tried to disarm him, and in that conflict of disarming him, he got shot. This was the original story from Kristi Noem. Now, of course, that gives you the idea that he approached them, guns pointed at them, and they tried to wrestle the gun away from him, and in that context, the gun accidentally went off, and they shot him. That's the idea they wanted you to believe. And then, of course, we all saw the video, and it was nothing like that. Now, again, before we get into that video, actually, I do want to show this. We do have more context that has come out since, not of this specific incident, but of Alex Preddy kind of as a player in all of this. Here is a video that came out. The BBC confirmed with their facial recognition technology that this is Alex Preddy. And this was from, I believe, 11 days before the incident that occurred where he got shot. So this was Alex Preddy. And in this video, you'll see Alex Preddy kicking the taillight off of a police car, spitting on the police, yelling at them, and then he gets tackled. And we'll play the video here first, but then we'll get into why this is just so, on so many levels, is just ridiculous mismanagement.
This is a moment the news movement filmed on January 13th in Minneapolis, showing a man who appears to be Alex Preddy interacting with federal immigration agents 11 days before Border Patrol shot and killed him. Our footage was analyzed by the BBC, whose facial recognition technology confirmed his identity to a 97% degree of accuracy. On the morning of January 13th, our team received a tip that federal agents were blocking a street at the corner of East 36 and Park Avenue in Minneapolis. We arrived around 10:15 a.m. We saw observers shouting at the agents as they walked back to their vehicles. When they started driving away, the man kicked their taillight. An agent then got out of the vehicle, grabbed him, and pushed him to the ground. During the altercation, agents fired tear gas and pepper balls into the crowd. They continued to hold the man down before they retreat and he walks away. The man in our footage is wearing a similar outfit to what Preddy was wearing on the day he was killed. What appears to be a gun is also visible above his waistband.
So this video just points out two pieces of ridiculousness right away. Number one, obviously, is the insane notion that Alex Preddy was this, like, godlike figure, the perfect, as Ana Navarro put it on CNN, this perfect person, the guy you'd want to date your daughter, the guy you'd want your son to grow up to be. So obviously that was insane. That was ridiculous. It just gives the exact same vibe of 2020, where just because something that was probably unjust was done to these people, we make them into these, like, untouchable figures. Obviously that's ridiculous. This guy was there. He was a repeat offender in this instance. He was an agitator. Obviously he was in these situations. He put himself in a lot of these situations where he's directly in confrontation with the police and is at risk of something going wrong. I mean, let's be honest for a second. Everyone who is saying that this guy was like the perfect person. How many of you people have gotten into direct confrontation with the police multiple times? And how many of you people, if you answered yes to that, think that there's no possibility of something going terribly wrong? Again, it does not justify the thing going wrong, but it does make you wonder what sane person puts themselves in this situation. So that's number one. Obviously, the characterization of this guy by the media was completely ridiculous. Number two, though, is we move back to the actual shooting itself. That changes nothing about how we should look at the actual shooting itself, because that doesn't affect, this backstory is interesting and it's worth looking into, but that doesn't affect how we should judge the actual shooting itself. Was that just or not just? And again, I still hold this position, again, unless some videos come out from minutes before this that show him like pointing a gun at police officers or something. This shooting itself does not look justified. They disarmed him. He had his back turned. He's on the ground. 7 guys on top of him just kind of beating him up. And then he could just get shot 9 times. I don't think that's just. Sorry. I just don't. But Christy, the mismanagement here is on multiple levels. Because in this shooting itself, in the instance where Alex Preddy was killed, Kristi Noem comes out and creates this story out of thin air to try and get coverage, or trying to cover for DHS. She is trying to create a story out of thin air that paints this guy in the worst possible light. That's the first jump that the administration goes to, or at least Kristi Noem goes to. And this is what I'm talking about, which is with just these people have no plan. They don't think long term at all. They're not thinking about the consequences of the things that they're doing. Because very obviously, the best possible thing that they could have done in this situation was for Kristi Noem to say, we are aware of this incident. We are conducting an investigation. We have nothing further to say just yet. That's the best thing. Why wouldn't you do that? It does not contradict. And this is where it gets complicated. Let's just say that the Trump administration actually wants mass deportations, which again, they don't. But if they did, it does not contradict the wish for mass deportation policies to say, okay, this shooting in itself deserves a deep look, an investigation into what happened here. Why is that at all contradictory? Why do we have to do this maximalist position right off the bat and automatically seek to justify a shooting that on its face does not look very justifiable? Why do we have to do that? It just make it the PR nightmare that came as a result of that was deserved. She did it to herself, Kristi Noem did. And Stephen Miller, who took Kristi Noem's word, which was dumb, he has this media firestorm coming for that. Why would you do that? You have not seen any of the evidence. So why are you jumping to the conclusion that these people that are involved in this incident are domestic terrorists? It's ridiculous that you would do that. And also, I do want to point out the mismanagement on the ICE side there in that first video from 11 days prior. Alex Preddy in that video spits on an officer, which is assault. He kicks their taillight. He vandalizes a ICE vehicle, kicks their taillight off. And then, as a result of that, they don't even go to arrest him. They get out of the car, beat him up real quick, say justice is served, I guess, and then drive off. This is what I'm talking about when I say this is not a professional operation. Like, what was that? He vandalizes a police car and then spits on the police, which is assault. In what world are we not arresting him for that? Why was he... Then we wouldn't have had this... If the ICE officers in that instance actually arrested him instead of just beating him up and then saying justice is served, like, then we would not have had... Then we would have had accountability for that crime, and we would not have had the PR nightmare of him getting shot in the middle of the street. Like, this... All of this does not have to be this way. Everybody on both sides of this chaos in the street are doing this by choice. The agitators are there in full force by choice. They are choosing to go out in the street and fight with these police officers. They don't have to do that. Tim Walz and Jacob Frey are choosing to provoke this. They are choosing to go out and tell these agitators that the Nazis are in town and that they must throw their lives on the line, jump in front of cop cars to save the country from this Nazi takeover. They're choosing to do that. Don't get it twisted. They are choosing to do this because it's politically beneficial to tell their base that the Gestapo is rolling in. And ICE also has agency in all of this because they are choosing to conduct these operations in the most chaotic way, in a way that they know is going to result in these massive street protests and riots. And it has now the result of all of it, for the people that are really advocating for this in full force, that are taking the entire administration's line here, they're missing the entire point that mass deportations were never the goal. It's the stated goal, but in reality, they've already conceded that's not what they're trying to do. So all of this chaos, all of this unrest, the death of 2 Americans is going to result in the end in no mass deportations and probably a decade, at least, of the American people hating the concept of mass deportations. You had a mandate, and this ridiculous and planless chaos squandered that mandate. That's the reality of what happened here. And just to prove the point that Trump was never serious about actual immigration reform, unfortunately, just to prove the point that he is not actually serious about doing what you would have to do to get mass deportations. Again, we played this on the show about a month or 2 ago when this came out. This is what Trump said on Laura Ingraham about H-1B visas and about Chinese students. This is what he had to say about the immigration topic that we were all convinced would bring mass deportations. Take a look.
The Republicans have to talk about it, Laura.
And does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent.
We have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put you...
How did we ever do it before?
Well,
I'll
give you an example. In Georgia, they raided because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. You know, making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing and very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people early stages to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say a country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant, and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles. It doesn't work that way.
You've said as many as 600,000 Chinese students could come to the United States. Why, sir, is that a pro-MAGA position when so many American kids want to go to school and there are places not for them, and these universities are getting rich off Chinese money?
Sure. Never said about China, but we do have a lot of people coming in from China. We always have, China and other countries. We also have a massive system of colleges and universities. And if we were to cut that in half, which perhaps makes some people happy, you would have half the colleges in the United States go out of business.
So what?
Well, I think that's a big deal.
Are they fans
you would have the
of the United States?
Yeah, but you would have, as you know, historically, black colleges and universities would all be out of business. You would have a system of colleges and universities.
So we're dependent on China to keep our university system going?
But I think it's good to have, I actually think it's good to have outside countries.
My reason for showing these clips again is because it's not to say that these instances are all the exact same. Immigration enforcement with ICE is distinct from H-1B, which is distinct from student visas, but it's to show that we, in principle, the kind of base of right-wing politics here, the base of right-wing politics believes in principle in the idea that America is a sovereign country. The American people have the right to America's resources before the rest of the world does. So if we follow that, then for Chinese students in these Ivy League universities, no, I think American students have the right to spots at American universities before people from China do. That's perfectly legitimate. I think American workers have the right to jobs at factories before people from South America do. Before we import the rest of the world to fill these spots, I think it's perfectly legitimate to say, well, wait. Let's see what American people here are in this country that can fill these spots first. Because that's what's actually beneficial to America. A Chinese student coming from China, taking a spot in an Ivy League university, getting a degree, and then going back to China to use that knowledge to help Chinese industry. In what world does that benefit America? So either we're America first in principle or we're not. And I'm pointing out here by showing these clips again that all of us are equally upset with what Trump said in those clips. The point is, the reason we're upset with that is because we have the principle of American sovereignty. America as a nation is a thing, and we prioritize that country first. That's just a different ideology, a different starting point than what Trump was expressing in those videos, in those clips from that interview. That's where we'll end it off for today. In my last episode, I tore into kind of the leftist insanity on one side of this discussion. I wanted to take some time today because I think there is a lot to discuss when it comes to the problems that the government is creating in all of this as well. And I think that is really what needs to be discussed here as well, because I think not enough people on the right wing broadly are actually willing to criticize the administration when something is clearly wrong, a policy is clearly not serious, and someone at least needs to call it out. So that's what I'm willing to do. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to go to my Instagram, X, and Spotify and give all of those a follow. Also, if you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing here on YouTube, I'd really appreciate that as well. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Have a good one.
It is about who we are. It is about what we believe.
They're building up this case just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
The more you tell the truth, the stronger you become.
Mr. Speaker, we're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic tonight. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg.